I'm wondering what's going on with your campaign. There was a lot of optimism about you running for president. What happened?
Oh, Maria, these are narratives.
What happened indeed? Look, not long ago, many people on the right hailed DeSantis. He was supposed to be the less toxic alternative to Donald Trump. Supposedly more electable, too, with a little bit less of racism. Now it's a complete turnaround, and it's playing out on Fox News.
DeSantis is like a 10-0 team, okay? He's got a booming economy, and more people are moving there than any other state in the country.
Ron DeSantis also just lacks a lot of the charisma that we see from other candidates.
Molly, you know, he is the star right now. Is he the new leader of the Republican Party?
We got to do an intervention. He doesn't have the campaign skills. He is, talk about failure to launch.
We've not seen that from a governor or even, frankly, a senator have that kind of strength this early in a presidential primary.
You're down over 30 points to Trump. What's your strategy for catching up?
The media does not want me to be the candidate.
I was at a diner down at Harry and the Natives in Hobe Sound on Friday. People love him.
Your numbers are somewhere between 20 and 10%, and they've stayed there for about 2 months. There are those that say there's something about you that's not connecting.
My, how things change. The gap between DeSantis and the criminally indicted former president is visibly widening. Now over 20 points behind Trump. DeSantis is slipping despite trying to out-Trump Trump. Recently, his campaign sharing an anti-trans attack ad that criticized Trump, but it's not working. So back to the question. What happened? And what does this mean for Republicans who know Trump is politically toxic and a multiple loser and are desperate for an alternative? Joining me now to discuss, not to mock, is Fernand Armandi, Democratic strategist and pollster, and Valencia Johnson, political strategist and advocate who's worked on numerous presidential campaigns, including Joe Biden's. Fernand, I always start with you because you are in the free state of Florida. I have always been skeptical of DeSantis. I think that DeSantis is just like Marco Rubio. He is just like Jeb Bush. He is a guy who has a resume that a lot of people in Washington, D.C. and New York decide is going to be viable. But the real truth is they were never that charismatic to begin with. Is this America catching up with who DeSantis is, or has he really made tactical mistakes that has led his campaign to sort of peter out?
Jason, you're a college professor, so that's an all of the above answer in the multiple choice test question. The fact of the matter is you're right. But if you really want to narrow it down, Jason, to what the fundamental issue is, in my judgment, is that Ron DeSantis is not Donald Trump in a cult of personality party where Donald Trump is running for re-election again. He completely misread the election. This is a guy who was made in Florida, and every Republican Florida voter knows that were it not for Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis would never have been the governor of Florida. And not only the act of running against him, but really this has just been an awkward, rudderless campaign where this charisma-free, really kind of off-putting person really never stood a chance. And his only goal here now, I felt from the beginning, was just to be the last man standing. Can he hang around if something happens to Trump and have the nomination handed to him on a platter? If that doesn't happen, he's going to be Scott Walker, who had the lead and the momentum early in 2015 until the Trump taint overtook him and sent Scott Walker's career into political oblivion. That's where DeSantis is headed.
Valencia, I'm thinking of this even just from a strategic standpoint, right? Like, DeSantis was always behind Trump in the polls, but he kind of started from the bottom and he's still here, right? Like he was always down 10, now it's 20. I mean, from a strategy perspective, historically, is there an example of someone, you know, bridging or cutting into a 20-point gap in a primary when the public already knows who they are? It's one thing to be down 20 points when nobody knows who you are. Everybody in the country knows who Ron DeSantis is. Is there any way he catches up with Trump?
I mean, I think you just made it very clear right there. When the public doesn't really know who you are, when they actually don't know your political acumen, let's look at Donald Trump. There are a lot of people who were saying no way he could win the nomination, and then he did. But with someone like DeSantis, who the Republican Party, who Fox News even kind of crowned as the antidote, whatever antidote could be, to Trump for the Republican Party, and he's fumbling this, I would say he's fumbling this bad, right? It seems like he had a 20-point lead in the fourth quarter of a championship game, and then he just fumbled all of that with his crazy antics and people actually understanding who he is. And so it's going to be an uphill battle. But when you have your super PAC saying they've pretty much given up, when you have Republicans coming out and saying that he's gone too far to the right in a primary that is a cultural war primary where the person who is actually furthest to the right should be getting, closer to the nomination. He's got a very hard battle to get out of this. And I guess he may be trying to make history in coming out of this, but I don't see any path forward for him.
Essentially, Ron DeSantis might be the Atlanta Falcons of the GOP primary. That's pretty bad. Speaking of people who at one point we were talking about as being candidates potentially for 2024, Fernand, I want to play you some sound from Secretary of State Pete Buttigieg and his comments on some of the more grotesque things that we've seen out of the DeSantis campaign so far.
Who are you trying to help? Who are you trying to make better off? And what public policy problems do you get up in the morning thinking about how to solve? I just don't understand the mentality of somebody who gets up in the morning thinking that he's going to prove his worth by competing over who can make life hardest for a hard-hit community that is already so vulnerable.
As my friend and colleague at The Atlantic, Adam Sewer, often says, the cruelty is the point. But, sort of DeSantis's anti-trans, anti-LGBTQA legislation, policies, advertisements, and commercials, Fernand, is that hitting anywhere? I mean, is there anybody who is a bigot who's going to be more of a bigot now that DeSantis has activated them? Or is this just him pandering to what is already a shrinking part of the primary audience that he might still be able to convince?
No, I think DeSantis is learning. He's squeezed the last drop out of bigot juice with his woke talk and all of his woke elements here. But Jason, in all seriousness, Ron DeSantis had an awful, horrific, no-good campaign launch for president. Today may be the worst day in a series of really bad days. I'm going to tell you why. There was a poll that came out here in Florida today, the state that he is the governor of, twice elected. He is down by 20 points in Florida against Donald Trump. Donald Trump's getting 50% of Republican Florida voters for president. DeSantis is only getting 30. If you can't even lock down your home state, what can you lock down? And you see this candidacy quickly crumbling beneath its feet. I think if he's smart, and the jury's still out on that, by the way, he's going to start to try and look at, is there an exit, an off-ramp here before this gets even worse? And I destroy any prospects in the future of running for president again as a Republican.
I have to comment, the idea of bigot juice as a product, I just hear DeSantis saying, obey your thirst or else. Anyway, Lencia, really quick, if DeSantis fumbles, is there another Republican out there? I doubt it's going to be Chris Christie. Is there another Republican out there that can actually make this a competition for Donald Trump? Or is it basically just a personality cult and it doesn't really matter? He's going to run away with it? Very quickly.
It is a personality cult, and unfortunately, as he continues to be charged with crimes, the base continues to support him. And the only other candidates I think people are talking about are the Tim Scotts and the Nikki Haley's, who seem to be playing this whole I might want to be a VP candidate position versus trying to take out Donald Trump. And so it looks like we're probably stuck again with another Donald Trump presidency or candidacy in 2024. Definitely not presidency if I have anything with it.
Fernand Armandi and Alencia Johnson, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight on The Beat.